Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We do hope you're keeping very, very safe and well. Thank you ever so much for joining us. Here we are, a week after the season has finished, and we was due to be back with you with an extensive season review, which, given this morning's momentum, has completely overtaken what's to come. Spurs on the verge of appointing yet another new manager in Ange Postecoglou, and also Harry Kane's future very much up in the air. I think for all of our wonderful, loyal viewers and listeners, the season review that you oh so craved, I'm sure, or probably be cut short for all of your benefit. We're joined by a wonderful, great, returning regular panelists here to the Last Word on Spurs. Let's hello to the wonderful guys that have given up their time for this show, and one is still to come. Back on Last Word on Spurs, a man that's been with us through some difficult moments this season, but he's here. We've got the wonderful Ricky J. Norwood back on the show. Ricks, how are you, bud? You okay?
I'm okay, my friend. The sun is shining. The weather is sweet. What more could you want apart from some Tottenham news? I'm ready. It's great to be here, and the season is done. And let's look forward. Let's see what the future holds. And I'm really excited to be on the show with you and all the lads. I'm excited to see Costa as well. Well done for the charity match the other day, my friend. Well done to you. And what a great cause for Dukesy as well, bruv. So I'm looking forward to hearing some stories about that too. And great to be on with everybody else. Let's have it. Let's have it.
Likewise, a man that is comes from a remote location, bless him, overseas. The man is always somewhere. He actually done the double during the week. Thank God someone's winning trophies on this show. We've got the wonderful, crazy training instructor, conductor, about yet to bring in yet another manager and discuss him as well. We've got the wonderful Lee McQueen is back. Macca, how are you, bud?
Rickstar, how you getting on, boys, viewers, listeners? I am in, I can't say sunny today because it's actually overcast, but I'm in Austin, in Texas. Yeehaw. Austin Spurs, big shout out to you. You know who you are. And yeah, thanks for bringing it up. My business, Phoenix 51, a data-driven business, by the way. So Tottenham Hotspur, if you are looking for data-driven, come and talk to me. We won a double, which was an amazing achievement for us. Started obviously our tech startup in the global pandemic, and then won a couple of trophies, as you said, Rick. And we're up for a few more by the end of this month as well. So hopefully we'll do a bit of a clean sweep, a little bit like Ange Postecoglou. Every time I say that for the rest of the season, having he's just done the treble. So we'll have to. I'm sure we're going to get into what the state of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club is, but it is an absolute pleasure to be on with you guys, and of course Jace when he rocks up as well. So thanks for having me back on, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. Back as well on this show. Delighted to have him here. We've got the wonderful Antony Costa's back from Blues. Very own Ant. How are you, mate? Another manager, mate, you're overseeing on this show. God.
Yeah, it's exciting, isn't it? It's really cool stuff. Looking forward to it. Lee, I love you, mate, but can you give them a waltz to Harry? So just to say, like, to not leave Tottenham, just so he can put it in his house. Listen, it's good to be on, boys. Lovely to see you all, and can't wait to talk about all things Spurs. Mr. Postecoglou.
Yeah,
Angelos Postecoglou. That's his name.
It's one of your own.
What's that? He's one of my own.
If there's anyone who's going to be able to understand a bit more of that, it's going to be the Ricky Sachs and the Antony Costa.
You can't make it up, can you? You can't make up
I love that,
Frank. married to a Greek over 5 years. It was at some point going to come full circle. We end up having a Greek in charge. You just can't make it. Ricks will definitely relate to that as well, bless him. Frank, love to have you back on Last One on Spurs, mate. When we obviously got in contact with you, it was a season review. That has now slightly changed due to the nature of the last 24 hours. Frank, you look excited. Are you excited?
Yeah, well, we're obviously going to go through the thick of it, but a lot has changed as it does so often and far too often in recent times at this club. But it's been a good day. I've been eating Vegemite, watching Neighbours reruns, listening to Kane in preparation for the appointment. No, that's so stereotypical. We'll obviously get into it, but it's interesting times at Spurs at the moment, and I think tomorrow we'll probably get the news, because it seems all the sort of pre-media outlets, I call pre-media, so your Fabrizios who get it before the mainstream media, put it out there, Ornstein, have all confirmed that this is our next manager. So obviously we'll go straight into it after the hopefully very short and brief season review.
Yeah, well, listen, let's start as we mean to go on. We will touch upon the season review and we'll try and do our best. I know many are just keen for us to get this over with and discuss, of course, the man that potentially is in the dugout. And I say potentially because where Spurs have been at least once on a situation where they've been close to hiring somebody, I think nothing is now for sure until they actually are either signing the dotted line or, as Ant says, they've got the T-shirt they're actually holding up and they have signed for the football club. Lee, let's come to you to start off this season review. It was a season that promised so much for Tottenham following the positive end to last season. Yet, if anything, it was a culmination of factors contributing to, let's be honest, a real slog of a campaign, having crashed out of all 3 cups in once again really disappointing fashion. We failed to qualify for Europe for the first time in 13 years. And in a campaign that really descended into utter chaos, it feels that for anybody coming in now, it is yet another major rebuild. I mean, as Frank alluded to, we had such optimism going into the start of the season, following, of course, Antonio Conte securing Spurs a top 4 place at the expense, of course, of Arsenal. And ultimately, that summer, of course, set the early groundwork for Spurs. We, of course, saw a number of players come into the football club. They included Ivan Perisic on a free transfer, Richarlison on a 60 million deal, Yves Bissouma for 35 million. Goalkeeper Fraser Forster came on a free, as well as youngster Jed Spence, Barcelona's Clement Longley on loan, and promising wing-back Destiny Aduji, who, of course, we did loan back. And, of course, also Romero's loan from Atlanta was made permanent. So overall spent well over 100 million as they once again tried to aim to end this barren spell without silverware. And I think definitely going into the start of the season at least, there was a real consensus that not only would Spurs actually secure another successive season of Champions League football, whisper it quietly, I think we all generally felt we might even be able to maybe challenge or even contend to have a say in the title race. So maybe, Lee, just give me your thoughts on what your initial reaction and thoughts were in terms of the summer and what we did at the time, of course, under Antonio, which seems like a long time ago now.
Well, I mean, as you're just going through that, it feels like it was about 3 seasons ago, doesn't it? That does not feel like it was this season. It just, that's mental. Like, it's craziness. Crazy train. But also, as well, we did have a big say in the title race. We rolled over for Arsenal twice to give them 6 points. So that was a big say, wasn't it? Do you know what I mean? I don't know what you're watching and listening. You can't be losing to Arsenal at home. Don't care how bad our team is. You can't be doing that. But we did. Yeah, it's just weird. And we had our best ever start to a Premier League season. I think we had 23 points after 10 games, 2.3 points per game, obviously, which is the highest and best Premier League start ever for Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. And then fast forward to the end of the season, and we've given away more goals than any other Premier League Tottenham team in 32 years. I think we conceded 63 goals. And one of the comments, I didn't catch your name, sorry, buddy, but one of the comments just said, I love Ange, but we're going to have to get some reinforcements in defence because he plays so high up attacking football. We conceded 63 goals this season in the Premier League. What are we going to do with Ange? So I think, from a summary perspective, I know you want to get onto Ange in a bit, right? But in a summary point of view, massively disappointing for our season. When I think there was in the green room at one of our shows, certainly on our WhatsApp group, we talked about what our expectations is after that first 10 games. And it wasn't really about we're going to win the title, but it was much around we have to beat our biggest ever points total. That has to be and I remember Jason and I having a really good conversation about it, going, look, if we've got 23 points after 10 games, we're right on track here to be beating 86. And what did we get? We got 60. We had a 22-point swing from Arsenal from the season before, in one season. So this is what makes me laugh when Antonio Conte was coming out in press conferences constantly, by the way, saying, we can't do this, we won't be able to do that, it was a miracle if we can do this. We can't, a very negative connotation comments, right? And he was saying, you don't get a 20-point swing or 15-point. No, you do. Because Liverpool done it a few years ago, as I keep banging the drum about, and everybody got behind them and look what happened to them. And Arsenal just done it to us, 22-point swing. So the general feeling going into the season with that transfer window, with everyone puking at the side of the pitch in their pre-season and everyone really fit and Eric Dyer looking ripped like a machine and the cheese board that is Perisic and as Crackers named him. And, we were massively fit, best start to a Premier League season. You're thinking, here we go. But, I have to say, and I have to put on record, I know we've talked about this a lot on the show, but circumstances did make a difference. Losing Jean-Pierre Vetrone was huge. and then Vialli for Antonio Conte. And that period of time running up to the World Cup, it was really, really tough. But having said all of that, we were still in, I think, top 4, maybe even top 3 going into that World Cup scenario. And we should have come back better. And it was the decisions, in my opinion, and I know it's your opinion, Ricky, as well, of the club, whereby we still got Harry Kane, didn't sort his contract out free then. Antonio Conte is going to stay. Is he not going to stay? Nothing was on their contract. And we've subsequently heard that Daniel Levy didn't want to rock the boat or poke the nest with Conte. But that contract situation with Conte should have been sorted during the World Cup for us to come back. And then Decky's injured, then Bentancur, and it was just a spiral out of control, wasn't it, Rick? And it has spiraled completely out of control. And as we talk today, 70 days is today since Antonio Conte was sacked or mutually agreed to terminate his contract on March the 27th. Today is the 70th day, and we still don't have a manager. And we do love a record, Spurs. We're only 2 days away from another one.
We are going to come on to that, man, for sure. Rick, if I can bring you in. Look, we talked about optimism for the season ahead, of course, and we spoke about the need for the club to build for the long term under Conte. We saw a host of unwanted names go out the door, and Ndombele, Bergwijn, Lo Celso were just a number of them that went out mostly on loan. It is barely believable now, but Spurs were unbeaten in their first 7 league games, and it can only ever be to Arsenal in their first 10, which coincided with Tottenham Hotspur's best ever start to a Premier League season. And we were in Dreamland on opening day, picking up where we left off with that 4-1 demolition of Saints to surge to the summit of the league. We quickly then, well, let's be honest about it, saw Conte's initial flashpoint to emergence with the 2-2 fiery draw at Stamford Bridge. And that game really set the tone for both clubs to have really an erratic season with utter chaos for both. We, of course, then saw, from a Tottenham perspective, some real, you to maybe say, character during that game at Stamford Bridge. But overall, Rick, if I was to ask you to analyse Spurs' start to the season, was it one of real optimism at the time, if you can cast your mind back?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, my prediction for that season going into it is that we was going to be second at a minimum. Do you know what I mean? And yes, that was overly optimistic and overly enthusiastic about what was happening. But I started to buy into the change and that kind of message that was being put out by the club about the change. If we're going to go for this win now, manager, we're going to give him the players that he wants. We're going to give him them early. We start with that 4-1 against Southampton, and then we have the best, as Lee just said, rightly so. There, our best points total. Now we know, watching it as fans, that we was a first half or a second half team in that run up. And I always believed that we was just a moment away from clicking and then going on a big run and going on the kind of run that them lot down the road did this season, and at least competing, at least challenging. So my enthusiasm and my optimism for the season was very high going into it. First time that we spent money, but made signings on the opening couple of days of the transfer window. I thought there was more to come. And I think we all said it on this panel as well. We all wanted more from that summer window. We all wanted the big money left centre back, whether that be Bastoni or anyone else.
Bastoni.
I know. We should have done it. Should have done it when we had the opportunity. But this is what we are. This is what happens. Do you know what I mean? And where would we have been if we actually went out and kind of got that business done in the summer? Maybe we'll be in a different place. But yeah, going right up into the World Cup, I was, I was happy with the points total. I was happy with us climbing the table, and I thought that we were just a moment away from clicking and then actually playing the football that we ended the season with, that got us top 4 last season, or the season before now. So going into that World Cup, mate, I was like, this is definitely an opportunity to get the Kane deal done, to get the Conte deal done, and to start building on the foundations that were put in. Obviously, that didn't happen.
Frank, coming over to you. We saw, of course, a sequence of events where a solitary Kane effort against Brighton saw the England captain become the first ever player to score 100 Premier League away goals. And as Lee alluded to, he dedicated that strike to late fitness coach Jan Pierre Ventrone, who suddenly died at the age of 62 a couple of days beforehand. And you said at this time Spurs are really struggling to make waves in the Champions League, winning just 2 of their opening 5 group games and being denied a last gasp winner at home to Sporting Lisbon, landing Conte on the naughty step once again for another explosion of emotions. And however, with Christian Stellini on the touchline, a dramatic Pierre-Emile Højbjerg strike saw Spurs put Marseille to the sword in that final match day to send Spurs through as group winners. And it was equally tense, you'd say, in comeback wins over Bournemouth and Leeds that came either side of that success in France, as did more knockout disappointment in a third round EFL Cup exit to Nottingham Forest. I just wonder, Frank, at that time, is that when already you just felt there was certain cracks starting to appear at early that stage in the season, Frank?
Yeah, unfortunately, and again, the expectation after the Norwich game, and I mentioned off air this time last year doing the show, the optimism going into the season was huge. Expectations were high. We made some decent signings, but the centre back issue is become ridiculous now, because if you remember rightly, Jose Mourinho wanted a marquee centre back signing and got Joe Rodon. There was the Steve Hitchen incident of going to Italy or Milan to get Skimran, came back with a pizza. Bit of a laughing stock, unfortunately, because of we didn't get that centre back at that time. So I believe the last centre back we signed is Joe Rodon. Prior to that, Davinson Sanchez. So we've been left stale in that part of the fence, and it happened again this summer. Now I understand Bastoni probably didn't want to come. He's had a stellar season at Inter. They're in a Champions League final. But there wasn't a contingency plan. And I'm not sure if that was Conte or that was the club. Did Conte not have a secondary target? Was he waiting? We'll never know, I don't think. But to go into that season with one loan signing at centre-back, that's the first sort of sign of danger for me, because we all felt and we all knew that we needed that marquee centre-back to play with Romero. And obviously with playing 3 at the back, it was even more apparent that we needed another centre-half. So when the cracks started to appear, if you think, again, going back to the expectation, that the record of Conte's first full seasons in charge at clubs, that lifted expectation as well. We were discussing the fact that this is his first full season at Spurs. He's got an unbelievable record when he has that full season in charge. And I think the cracks started to appear when he lost his dear friend. And again, only at Spurs could we lose during the season a member of the first team coaching staff. I can't remember, has that happened to another Premier League club before? Have they lost a direct first, not one on the periphery, one of the main core first team staff? Has that ever happened to another Premier League club, Rick? I don't think it has. That, for me, obviously, that's so hard to get over. This is a guy that coached Conte when he played for Juventus. So he's known him for 30 plus years. And however strong you are, whatever character you are, that has to have an impact on your decision making, clarity of thought, all of that stuff goes out the window when you're operating on emotion. And for the whole squad as well, I mean, that is such a downer. That's such a negative to go through that, and the funeral and all that goes with it. But then, off the back of a record start, that was for me the first crack, Rick. Then it was the injuries. Obviously, Richarlison, Kulusevski has not been the same since the injury. Basuma, it seemed that there was a legacy problem from Brighton. And there was rumours, if you remember, we'd discussed that. Ant and I, we'd heard a story that he was injured when he signed. So hopefully that's cleared up and we'll get the best of Basuma next season. And then Bentancur does his ACL. And these continuous effects of, and adding the World Cup, you look at the amount of players we had at the World Cup. You look at Liverpool, for instance. I know they didn't necessarily have a stellar season, but Salah didn't go to the World Cup. Trent didn't play at the World Cup, did he? Alisson, did Alisson play? No, he played one game for Brazil. So many of their key players didn't play at the World Cup. City have just got the monster squad. You look at Arsenal. Saka played. Jesus got injured at the World Cup, didn't really play or feature. Ben White didn't feature. Saliba didn't play. I think he played half an hour. Xhaka played 3 games. I think Partey played 2 games. He was injured for the last one. So for me, how absorbing that was for us as a squad. We had many of our key sort of first team players, all at the World Cup, Bentancur included, who then came back and done the ACL. It was just the perfect storm. All of these things that just kept going against us throughout the season. And ultimately, Conte did manifest the negativity. And obviously, from a personal level, I sort of understand it. But if you keep telling your squad that they're lucky and you keep sort of giving the these interviews to your fans and just manifest this negativity constantly every week. We're lucky, we're not good enough, It makes the fans doubt the players. It makes the players' confidence dip. They doubt themselves, the self-belief goes. And it was just the slow decline, factoring all of those variables that I've just mentioned, was a recipe for disaster. And that is exactly what this season has been. It's been an absolute disaster, Rick. And from a level of expectation, we can go back many years. There's been poor seasons, but from what I expected last summer to where we are now is my most disappointing season as a fan, probably in my life as a Spurs fan, which is saying something. And that is because I expected so much at the beginning of the season, and everything went against us. So for me, it started with the death of Vedroni, and then there was sort of a period of injuries, the World Cup, the negativity, and that for me is where the cracks started to get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, you can't go away from that. Before we bring Jason and to come round to you, we saw, like I say, some high-scoring showings from Spurs. They thrashed Leicester 6-2. We also saw them beat Palace 4-0 in a game where, quite frankly, I think going into it, we didn't think that was ever going to happen. We mentioned about, demonstrating some ability to gain points from losing position. Spurs actually trailed in 21 league games, more than Fulham, and only 3 fewer than Bournemouth. But they won 4 and drew 3 of those games. And there was some stomach under Conte, as we mentioned. There was that 4-3 win over Bournemouth away, and then Leeds at home. But nevertheless, I think, Spurs, we entered that World Cup break, sitting in the Champions League places, having only spent 1 week out of the top 4. And, I think the feeling and mood around it, was the fact that everyone seemed to feel that we were conserving energy and we were going to explode in the second half of the season. So what was your actual thoughts, Ange, going into the World Cup? And was you actually of the firm belief that we would see a real upturn in Spurs' fortunes going into that second half of the season?
Yeah, I did. I tried to put a positive spin on things. I think coming to what Frank was saying, going into that World Cup, I think it was either Frank or Rick said, we were flying high. We were doing well, and playing some all right football, but getting the results that we needed. But going into that World Cup, I was quietly confident. I thought, right, the boys are going to come back. They're going to be fitter, sharper, wanting it more, and it just went from worse to worse. Really, it wasn't. I think for me, as I said to you boys on many occasions, the season ended for me when Sheffield United beat us in the FA Cup, and everything else was just playing out the season. I really thought we could really go for the FA Cup this year, but unfortunately we didn't. We bowed out to them, and then from that it just went from bad to worse. Obviously, the Conte's comments, right in saying what he said, but it didn't do the players no harm. It did the players harm, and the only one to really shine from that was Harry Kane. I think if we didn't have Harry, we'd be in, shit creek without a paddle, or whatever that saying is. So I'm very, very worried, lad. I'm very, very worried that this new manager comes in. Yeah, he got to back him. Was he my first choice? No. Was he my third choice? No. But again, if he's got to be managing our club, got to get behind him. But I'll tell you something now. There needs to be a massive clear out. I'm not saying it's going to happen this window, but players now need to know that they're not going to be part of his plans. We need to stop getting some new blood in, because I can't do another season with letting in 62, 63 goals. Because as Mac has said, he plays so far up the pitch, and he does play that attacking, free-flowing football that we've been crying out for. But if you ain't got the players at the back to do their jobs, we're going to be so bad. I'm very, very worried.
I mean, you would think the reason why they've got him in early, and we're going to come on to the man, is because they ultimately want to try and act decisively and quick, which is 2 words he doesn't normally. Well, listen, you're right. But I mean, in the context where
but if he was their one of their choices, sorry, I know you want to go to Jace, but if he was one of their choices, get him in early. Okay, let him win the league and all that with Celtic, but do a pre-contract so we can start seeing who he wants, who he doesn't want, and what we need. Because now we're going to be playing catch up to Liverpool's, the Chelsea's are signing players, United are signing players, City are going to be going into different stratosphere, and we're going to be sitting there going, oh well, transfer window's open, who are we selling? Should be selling players now.
The reality is, Anne, up until last week, I don't even think he was on the list. He may well have been on the list, but he may have been quite far down the list. I mean, this wouldn't even be a conversation. This wouldn't have even been a conversation had, of course, Arne Slot agreed to come to Tottenham. That's the reality. And now, let's be honest about it. They're fishing around maybe in a pool that maybe they wouldn't have been. But look, we are going to come on to...
Sorry, Rick, I digress, but you know what I mean.
Manager. Of course.
Yeah.
Nice to bring you in as we try and rapidly finish this season review. Love to have you back on, mate. Yes, you're discussing another manager. Yes, I'm taking you back through last season. I apologise in advance. In terms, obviously, of the way Spurs started 2023, 3 of the Lily Whites' 4 Premier League games in 2023 ended with defeat, while there were, some real substantial pain losses for Antonio Conte, one, of course, being the severe abdominal pain he suffered towards the end of January. It was announced, of course, that he would undergo an operation. And as Conte recuperated, this sounds mad me saying this now, Stellini did actually weave his magic. Spurs, although they put in some absolute stinking performances, they were only able to win 2 of their 10 games against the Big Six. However, one of them, of course, was that near-perfect display against Manchester City. Harry Kane breaking Jimmy Greaves' all-time record. That stood for 53 years. And quite frankly, Spurs, they broke Pep Guardiola's brain yet again. And, Spurs in that January window, they took the subtle approach, if you want to call it that. We saw Arnaut Danjuma brought in on loan with a view to then a 27 million buyout option, which we know Spurs subsequently have not taken up. And then a deal was finally struck on the deadline day for Pedro Porro, another loan, but with an obligation, of course, of 39.5 million. We saw some of the fringe players actually go out on loan. Spence going to Rennes, Brian Hill rejoining his old club Seville, and linking up with Eric Lamela. And ultimately we saw not enough room for Matt Doherty, who saw his contract terminated, which seems such a long time ago now. And then upon that, we then saw, as Frank said, that season start to unravel. Bentancur's season was curtailed. We then were dealing with the loss of Gianluigi Vialli for, of course, Antonio Conte and a close friend in Sinisa Mihajlovic, as well as having that gallbladder removed. And Jace, that brought us nicely to the game which you and Rick's both covered on here, that AC Milan game where, of course, he was having a brief return to the touchline. Spurs dumped out of the Champions League and then subsequently, as Anne said, dumped out of the FA Cup when I think well and truly, Jace, would you say the wheels well and truly fell off the season?
What was the question?
That was the season review. Try and summarise that.
Bloody well, we've gone from Christmas to Easter in about a minute there. Straight to life. AC Milan was a real disappointment, wasn't it? To not really. I don't think we had a meaningful effort at goal in either leg. I think it was the late Kane header, wasn't there? That was about it over what best part of 200 minutes of football. So famous, of course, for bringing Davinson Sanchez on, although that wasn't why we got knocked out the cup. I mean, it was just the final straw, I think, for people. But to not have a meaningful effort on target for the best part of 200 minutes. The defeat in Milan wasn't a catastrophic one. You thought, well, it's the first leg and Tottenham should be able to come back from that. But we just, the game was so flat at Tottenham, wasn't it? It was just that sense of it's, I mean, I think the horror of losing at Leicester at home by then as well, that's one of the blackest days of the season. I think we lost 4-1 at a relegated team. And we just never recovered from that. And was Sheffield before Milan? I can't even remember now. Did you say Sheffield was before Milan?
Yeah, that was in amongst those things.
Week, wasn't it?
Yeah, it
was.
was.
A whole week, wasn't it?
That
so
week.
there you go. It
That
kind
whole
of, you had the knock-on factor then, wasn't it? Confidence was down. Belief was down. I think the crowd was pretty flat. It just felt like the season was drifting. Everything was resting on Milan. But we just... That's the thing. If you're going to go out these competitions, the same at Sheffield, at least go out with the other goal, with the opposition keeper making saves or something like that. But we had nothing really on offer at Sheffield, and we had nothing on offer in 2 legs to Milan. And it just kind of summed up everything that happened after Christmas.
Yep. I'm glad you didn't talk about Harry's moment against Man City, because obviously we're going to come over to Harry in a bit more detail towards the end of the show and where his future does lie. But Lee, if I can turn around back to you, we're going to try and, like I say, wrap up this season review. I know many are asking in anticipation on thoughts on, of course, Spurs' incoming manager, which he may be incoming, we shall see. Lee, Conte was nominated for February's Manager of the Month, with the Lily Whites winning 4 of the 5 league games. Only the fact that he wasn't present for the majority of them, bar one, which was that shambolic 4-1 defeat, as Jason mentioned, up at Leicester, and a Champions League exit against AC Milan, which I think you could honestly sound the night, as Jason said, we could be barely bothered to attack until it was too late. In his final 5 months, that included the World Cup break, Spurs went on a run where they lost 8 of 16 games, and let's be honest about it, were routinely awful in the first half of matches and were occasionally having to be saved by Harry Kane. Christian Stellini, too, what you'd say about a fact is that he did get the side playing well to a degree, but a dip in form ahead of Conte's return to the dugout would see Spurs turn their season upside down, quite honestly, with that 3-3 draw against Southampton, having thrown away a 2-goal lead in which Conte mercilessly attacked his selfish players in what you would call an epic press conference, as well as appearing to point the finger at the owners for Spurs' trophyless streak, which now currently stands at 15 years. Conte, amongst other things, said he was frustrated with the selfishness of the players and they don't want to play under stress. Tottenham's story is this: 20 years and there is the owner. They've never won something. Lee, looking back now, there was no way back, was there, after that moment? I mean, he quite frankly talks the club, as much as we probably all agreed in a lot what he was saying there. Very hard to find a way back, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think we know subsequently, obviously hindsight, because we now know widely reported that Daniel, as I mentioned in my prelude right at the beginning, that Daniel didn't want to rock the boat because he felt that Conte was the best man still to get us into the top 4. And so he let him carry on doing his press conferences or whatever, where he's basically begging to be sacked. Like, he was literally going to his press conferences, he's going, "Sack me, please," because that's what he wanted. It was a crazy scenario. Again, going back to, it could have been so different after the World Cup, offering him a new contract, bedding him in. It could have been so different. So the mood could have been so different. But yeah, he wanted to go. And, I mean, when you're reading them stats out, Rick, it's embarrassing, isn't it, lads, viewers and listeners? Like 50% lose rate. Like, we lost 50% of the games. And most of them were against bottom 6-7 sides. I was at Sheffield United. Ant said, you just said, Ant, it was your break point. It was definitely my break point. I was at Sheffield United. I was at Wolves away. We should be winning these games. It was a fucking nightmare week. That was absolute nightmare. And then obviously, Jason mentioned about Milan as well, and going and then losing at home to Bournemouth subsequently during that period of time. Like, that Southampton 1-1, it's 1-1. Southampton 3-3. That draw. Drop points again. I mean, we're only 11 points outside the top 4. Like, go and have a look at the table. Only 11 points. You look at the games that we were shocking in. And that's not about shoulda, coulda, woulda, who one of my good friends, Beverly Knight, wrote and sung all them years ago. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. That's FC, innit? Shoulda, coulda, woulda FC. That's who we are. But, I think that when you look at some of them games that we did lose or drop points in, we were in positions to win them, like in the 93rd minute or in the 94th minute of the game. Like, we should be beating Southampton, shouldn't we, guys? Viewers and listeners, 3-1 up with like 5 minutes to go, whatever it is. We should be winning that game. So it's not about on paper we should beat them. In game, we should be beating them. So to drop them 11 points and then subsequently be 11 points outside of the top 4, it's embarrassing, Rick. It's actually embarrassing. And then, which I'm sure you're going to touch on now, so forgive me, but I hand back over, the absolute, excuse my French please here, shit show of putting Stellini in charge and then getting rid of him and getting Mason in. I mean, what is going on? We had 3 managers in the last 10 Premier League games. We've gone from the best ever start to a Premier League season, our first Premier League 10 Premier League games, to our last Premier League 10 Premier League games being absolutely shambolic.
Lee, I've just seen on, sorry, Rick, so seen on the comments here, Mark, he's saying Dyer's mistakes cost us 12 points. One man cost us 12 points.
Hugo would have been 9. I think Hugo would have been 9, possibly.
So that's 20 points.
There's a title charge there. Just add them points on this.
That's what I mean.
You know what I mean?
Just alone from individual errors.
Press have actually alluded to, individual errors have cost us. Now, regardless of style of play, it has been turgid at times to watch, particularly in the latter part of the season. Individual errors have been the Achilles heel for this team this season. And I think Anne mentioned earlier, whoever comes in as manager, if it is Postecoglou, there has to be this clear out because we cannot persist. I mean, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. We cannot continue to do this. These individual errors, the players who commit them have to be weaned out the club.
I've just seen now, we got loan players coming back. They need to be given a chance. No. I mean, what is this? Is it Spurs help the football aid or something? Like, what's going on, man?
Frank,
come on.
Frank, you mentioned there about individual errors and whatever. I remember, and I'm sure all of us will. I remember Dele Alli in the, I think it must have been in the All or Nothing documentary, coming into dressing room.
Put a name on it, Del. Put a name on it. That one.
Saying exactly that. He said, "We cannot keep doing this." It was just after the semi-final, I think, or there was an interview after the game. I think when we got beat by Chelsea in the FA Cup semi-final, so it was obviously pre the Amazon documentary, and he comes, we cannot keep doing this. He walked past. Do you remember?
Yeah.
He walked past.
Years ago, Lee.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's my point,
years ago.
It's ridiculous.
And it's still going on.
You got Loris. You got Loris, Sanchez, Davis, and Dyer. Them four players alone, right? Regardless that they've been good over the years or whatever, regardless of people's opinions, they've been at the club for a combined 28 years.
Well, the only one who deserves
that's
maximum
mental,
respect is Hugo Lloris.
Yeah.
Because he's been an unbelievable servant for the club. But he should have been sold 3 seasons ago. You know, every player has an expiry date. Father Time catches up with everyone, particularly in any athletic sport. It's just a fact of life. You can't outlast time. And as much as he was, for me, one of the best in the world at his peak, and you'll all agree with that, we are so bad at the timing of getting rid of players and moving them on. And it's such a shame that the end of his, what should have been a legacy at Spurs, is now he's leaving out the back door. He was injured at the end of the season. I hope he gets a testimonial, but it shouldn't be that way. It's utterly ridiculous. And that is because of the way that the club is run, and that is gross negligence from the board, because they do not understand that part of football. And other clubs, okay, there are other clubs that perhaps, you know, no club is perfect, but most other clubs seem to get that bit far better than us in how they sell players. Not all of them, but you know, most other big clubs anyway.
Alex Ferguson was a master at it, wasn't he? Sorry, Rick.
He was the best for me. He was the best. And Pep Guardiola, Zinchenko and Jesus last summer. You know, they've won everything with City pretty much, barring the Champions League.
Who's the guy that went to Bayern on loan? Who saw that coming? Like from Pep?
Cancelo. Yeah, Cancelo was in was he in the team of the season last year?
He's won a Champions League. He's won a Premiership trophy and a German trophy now.
Because again, it's not right. If they don't fit, it's not right. And I'm wondering whether a lot of people are saying this. Sorry, Rick, if Ange is going to come in and do that, because that's what it needs. It needs somebody to have the cojones to come in and go, right, you're gone, and that is the big painful rebuild, isn't it, Rick?
Yeah. Also,
sorry.
Congrats to an ex-Spurs player, Toby Alderweireld, scored a 94th minute screamer to win Belgium team the first league ever in 55 years. That's another player.
Another winner.
And for all of our sakes, I'm going to power through the season review with Rick and Jay, so we are going to come on to discuss the new manager. He does win trophies, believe it or not. That might stop when he comes to us, but he does win. Rick's coming over to you as we look to wrap up this season review. A whole 8 days after criticising the players, the ownership, and the club's culture and history, it was clear Conte's position was untenable. They allowed him to leave by mutual consent. And as Lee mentioned, Christian Stellini was given the job bizarrely on an interim basis. And despite the myriad of problems escalating, Spurs still had a decent shot of the top 4 at that point. They were 4th as late of the 3rd of April, which, just to remind you of that, which I still find absolutely baffling. But he was in the middle of what was really a civil war. We thought things couldn't get worse. They could. We saw a 6-1 thrashing against Newcastle United. And of course, under Stellini, we were then beaten at home by Bournemouth just a week before that. And sandwiched in between, we got, let's be honest with it, a very, very fortuitous win against Brighton, which in hindsight on another day, I don't know how we ended up with that. But the madness didn't end there, Rick. We saw, of course, Spurs go 3 down against Liverpool in the inside of 15 minutes. But I will pause on that and just give you your chance to talk, of course, about Christian Stellini's tenure for your own sake, if you wish.
Mate, I don't know about Christian Stellini's tenure. You know, we all knew it. We all knew straight away it was a mistake. I think we all felt it in the pit of our stomachs. You know, you can't get rid of Conte and then have his number 2 or number 1 man take over and play exactly the same style of football, exactly the same tactics, exactly the same drills. You can't do that, you know, because we all knew and we all said it, all of us, that you could never get a new manager bounce doing that. You don't get that kind of sigh of relief. You don't get that breath of kind of, okay, Conte's out the door. And if we look at what Mason was saying, especially towards the end of his press conferences, you know, leading up to the end of the Premiership, the amount of times that he said he's so proud of his own work because of how damaged that the squad was. So there's so many things that we don't know as fans. Do you know? What's happened? I thought I went in and it was Lee. Sorry. I saw the screen go and I thought it was me. I thought I cut out. But there were so many. I think there's so many things that we don't know what's been happening in the training ground, how the feeling has been, especially since after the World Cup. I noticed a massive change in the tone of press conferences from Antonio Conte pre-World Cup to post-World Cup. I just felt it in the water. Something had changed. And as Lee said earlier, he was looking to get himself sacked. I don't know whether you guys have seen it or, the listeners and the viewers have seen it. Simon Jordan talks about it, that, he actually went in there to kind of set fire to the place because Levy wasn't going to sack him. He was going to keep him there and kind of entrust him to earn that money, that yearly 15 million, and go get the job done, and then we'll work it out at the end of the season.
Maybe we needed this carnage, Rick, though. Maybe we needed the thing to be set on fire. As Cracker says, it's the clown's car on fire, but maybe we needed somebody to just blow it up, and then now we have to start again. There's no choice, is there?
Absolutely, bro. And you know what? Everything that he said in that press conference, however kind of vile or kind of, hot and harsh it was, majority of it was true. But what got me with Conte, and I think he's my biggest disappointment of the season, to tell you the truth, because he rose the bar. He kind of was this win now manager. He's going to change the way. We're going to go for A, B, and C. So I raised my level with him. So to see that sturgid, very strict horseshoe, terrible football that we continue to play, that we continue to invite pressure onto us. And then after the World Cup, how we dropped off and how everybody started to give up. Do you know what I mean? And maybe that came from Conte there, because yes, he had his gallbladder. He was out for a period of time, but it sounds like, as a lot of you kind of guessed early on in the season, that he didn't want to be there. He didn't want to be there, and we started to see that. And how you can entrust Stellini to kind of take over and bring something new or bring something fresh or change the culture. How can you change the culture if the man that is teaching the culture every day, that has now subsequently been the wrong culture, is still there? Do you know what I mean? Regardless of whether it's Conte or Stellini, the same things were being taught, were being shared, were being trained, and were being entrusted to those players. And we saw how much of a fall off we had. We was getting out of trouble early throughout the season in those first halves or the second halves, or Harry Kane goals, or you know what I mean? Like even Højbjerg popped up in the first half of the season with goals that got us through Champions League and stuff like that. So we were getting results, but we wasn't getting any real performances. And you could see with Stellini, I think he just kind of galvanized that chaos and has brought it to the surface now, where we're at a point now where we have to be really, really careful with the business that we do and with the manager that we bring in. Everyone's saying it's 99% done Ange Postecoglou, but everybody said the same about Slot. Everybody said the same about Fonseca. We've been here, we've done that. So until he's holding the shirt, I can't say anything. I can't look forward. We can guesstimate and we can kind of hypothesize, but I'm not going to kind of jump in wholeheartedly yet. But you look at teams like Leicester that won the league not too long ago. You know what I mean? Like you look at Southampton, who have always had a pretty much decent side. You look at Everton, who have spent money in the past, but have been lost with the way in which they play and the philosophy and all of those things. The same traits that we've got in us right now. And to come into Tottenham at this time, I think Mason's done a great job to stabilize it and to bring the level back up and to bring the joy back up a little bit and to the joy in playing football.
Rick. How many games did we win under Mason? How many games did we lose? Come on,
no, but bro,
he didn't stabilise anything. He didn't give us joy. Come on.
A minute, Frankie. Let me just tell you something. The same way that you was cussing at Ten Hag is the same way that you're cussing at Mason right now, and I'll explain what I'm trying to say. Mason, yes, we lost those games, but was those traits not embedded in our squad from when Mourinho took over? So we've had Mourinho, then we've had Nuno, then we've had Conte, and then we've had the fall off after that World Cup, right? So we were losing games before Mason took over. I'm not talking about the actual.
I understand
results.
that, and what you're saying is right. The squad isn't good enough, and obviously they've been taught many bad sort of negative habits over the sort of several years that they had those style of managers. But he didn't bring any joy back, and he didn't lift the standard. We finished the season in a whimper. We nearly finished ninth.
Maybe not for us, bro. Maybe not for us, but you could see there was a difference. I went to the Man United game. I saw a bit of a difference in that one. Even the comeback at Liverpool, even though that Lucas, all right, he gave it to Jota and Jota scored in that, but there was a comeback. There was a bit of a fight. We were starting to play a couple of triangles here and there instead of playing that horseshoe football that infuriates me. So, all right, the results wasn't there, but I'm not saying that the results. I'm not saying employ Mason right now. I'm not saying Mason's the new guru. What I am saying is that for the next manager, at least he lifted the strain and the stress and that ugly football and that ugly way of turning up at the training ground. So he lifted that.
You're saying
that's a fair point. There was a grey cloud over the squad, and they probably enjoyed working with him more so than they did with certainly more so than they did with Stellini.
Because the way he speaks about football, Franks, even the way he speaks about football is very much the Poch way. It's very much about energy, and it's very much about, being a good man and a good person and do it, the things that he was saying about if you don't want to be here and have pride for the shirt, then I don't want you in the squad or I don't want you playing on the field. And I think that shift just stabilize, not the results, but just stabilize the club for whoever's next to come on, and fingers crossed take it forward, because this is such a massive job. We know, as we're going to speak right now, we know how many holes there are, and we know how many failures there is, and we know how big a job it is. The next manager ain't just coming in to coach the first 11. He's coming in to fix the whole philosophy, culture, and try and fix all of the cracks in every single wall in the club right now. So that's all I was saying about Mace.
No, it's fun. Jace, can I close it with you? We'll come on to the awards at the very, very end of the show. I'm keen on to get in terms of Postecoglou and Kane's future covered on the show. Jace, obviously towards the end of that season, there was a lot of disdain for Daniel Levy. It got to new heights following takeover rumours. The Iranian-American billionaire Jam the Jaffe was being linked. They were being quickly dispelled at the same time. We saw that madness at Anfield, as Rick alluded to there, 3 down within 15 minutes. Fought our way back to 3-3, only for a last-minute winner from Liverpool, with Lucas Moura getting involved to help them out with that one. You could say the mood maybe slightly improved. Harry Kane overtook Wayne Rooney's Premier League record, 209th goal against Palace, but then a subsequent 2-1 defeat against Aston Villa pretty much ended our wafer-thin hopes of any form of, you'd say, Champions League qualification. That was then followed up by, as we saw, a 3-1 defeat at home to Brentford, which encapsulated really a really incredibly muted award ceremony, and it saw Spurs lose 5 of their final 8 matches, slump into an 8th place finish, our worst position since the 08-09 season, and therefore our lowest of 13 seasons, missing out on Europe altogether. Jason, I'll let you have the final words on this season review.
Well, I'm pleased we missed out on the European checker trade, that's for sure. So, thank God we missed out on the dog shit, numbers on the shirt competition. But no, it petered out. The kind of the thing that leads some of the season up, didn't it? Lucas Moura finishes his career with a brilliant goal, having cost us a lot at Everton, and then immediately we got to 3-3 at Liverpool. It cost us again. So that kind of sums up Lucas Moura's time as well, didn't it? And just there were so many little bits in the season that summed individual players up, individual mistakes. Romero missing at the end of the season, but fit for Argentina again, and all those types of things. It just, just a shocking way for the season. And I think we were all quite glad that final whistle went at Leeds, and you think, right, season's done. Whatever, you have to accept whatever position you're in. At least that lot down the road didn't rub our noses in it by having a bus parade around the streets of North London, and you just have to try and rebuild over the summer. I still look at the summer and think we missed out on the Champions League by 11 or 12 points. And yes, Liverpool will be stronger and Chelsea will be stronger. And, everyone will sign players that immediately make them so much better. Like Darwin Núñez made Liverpool so much better last year. Like 600 million made Chelsea so much wonderful football last year. Like Antony and Varane and all that and Casemiro made Man United so much better last year, but they'd lose by 7 and lose by 6 and lose by 4 at Brentford. So, we shouldn't be too down going into the summer. All we've got to do with 3 weeks next year is find those 12, 13 points. And I think there's as much chance of us finding 13 points as there is of Chelsea finding 30 points.
We shall see.
Can I just say, great points there, Jace. Very good points on all of that.
But it is, isn't it? Everyone's going to be instantly stronger because they bought a player. But it doesn't always work that way, does it? It just doesn't.
No.
Like we just said as well, just on that point, like we just said, Brighton, absolutely brilliant. Deserved brilliant. Like their squad, everything. Paul Barber, I love him. Brilliant. We finished 2 points behind them after an utter shit show of a season. And if we go and get that extra win or that extra, it's a complete different story. 11, 12 points to find.
And I guarantee we'll finish above them next year.
Yeah, I'll
guarantee it.
Me too. Totally with you. 100%.
We will.
Okay, well, we shall see. Let's bring it on then to this next point in the subject. Now, again, I don't want to go too early because until the man has got the shirt and he signed the contract, as Rick alluded to earlier, we've been here before. Let's hope we're not there again. But it appears Spurs are closing in on a new manager. They're poised to make an official approach to Celtic this week. But it appears that Postecoglou, from a personal perspective, has already agreed terms with Tottenham. Spurs are on the verge of appointing Ange Postecoglou as their new head coach. I've got to say, my God, it's been an interesting few weeks. It really, really has been in the world of Spurs. It definitely has, I would say, lit the touch paper for real fan opinion as to whether this man will be the right man for Tottenham. Let's go to Frank first. Frank, if I can. Ange Postecoglou, I'm really intrigued to know if he was on your list. If he was, how far was he up it? And I suppose the most important question, are you excited about the prospect of this man coming to manage the football club?
But he wasn't on the radar. I'll be totally honest about that. And I don't think he was on anyone's list. Perhaps many, I don't know. There's many conflicting and polarising opinions on Ange Postecoglou. Now, I have watched Celtic play, and they play dynamic, interesting football, all out attack, all guns blazing. And I understand he's doing it with Celtic in the SPL. One thing I will say is the Celtic fans seem to absolutely worship and adore him, and they've won everything in the last 10 to 12 years, particularly with the demise of Rangers in the 2010-11, whenever it was. They've had Brendan Rodgers, Neil Lennon. They've been successful. They've won trebles, but they seem to have a special sort of place in their hearts. And the opinion that they have of Postecoglou seems to be a better opinion than the managers I've just mentioned. So that's a good, for me, that's a positive. I like the way that I like his football journey. I like the way that he's had to sort of overcome the barriers and the stigma of being an Australian football coach. And I like the way that he's progressed and pound for pound what he's done, the respective clubs and obviously the national team, but the clubs he's coached at. I think it was in Japan. He won a league title for a team that hadn't won in 15 years. So he's achieved a lot within that sort of, at that level, within the context of where he was. Now, the question will be, how can he handle a squad full of internationals and bigger players, bigger personalities? For instance, if Harry Kane does stay, that's another conversation. But Brazil's number 9 is then on the bench. How does he handle that situation? How does he handle the overhaul of this squad that it so desperately needs? How does he tell players? He seems pretty ruthless. And I hope that he takes that up to this level, because you can argue, obviously, Celtic are a huge club, and I'm not denying that, but this is the Premier League. He's coming into a fractured club at the moment. The fan base is at a multi-year low. There's this angst and negativity around the ownership. There's doubts over Scott Munn's appointment. There's so many questions over this football club at the moment. So if he can come in and galvanise, then that would be pretty incredible. Now, the one thing I would like to say is we've all said that the big personalities, the big names working under Daniel Levy, big names typically need ready-made squads. You look at Ancelotti, he was at Everton, he finished mid-table, went to Real Madrid and won the Champions League. So you could be the best manager in the world. If you haven't got the tools to work with, it's not going to work. So we've been there, we've done that. We've had the misery of Jose, we've had subsequently the misery of Conte, we've had the negativity of Nuno's style of play. We all want to enjoy it. I want my fun back in my football. I want to go to the stadium and see front foot, exciting football. Now, if he's allowed to build the squad and mould it into to his vision, into what he wants it to be, then it might work. If he isn't, it's doomed to fail. He'll be gone by Christmas. If they're not going to clear out the players that we all know shouldn't be there after this summer, and he's not allowed to bring a decent keeper in, a couple of centre-backs, a playmaker, all of the positions that we all know, we don't need to talk about that. But if he's not allowed to do that, he's doomed to fail. But one thing that is interesting is he is an unbelievable communicator. And this is what we need at the moment as fans. This is what the football club needs. It needs somebody who can communicate. And we've had Poch, who was a fantastic manager for us, but he wasn't a great communicator. Particularly in the early days, he used to talk about cows crossing roads and riddles. We had Jose, who was Mr. Negative. We had Conte, who I think a lot of what he said was lost in translation at times. I do, because he couldn't quite. He's a very emotional Italian. They talk with their hands. You know, they like to express the way they're feeling, and it didn't translate for me at times. So this, for me, could be a breath of fresh air. The only thing that probably most of the fan base are upset with is that the way that we've ended up here. Many wanted Poch. I don't think he was first, second, third, or fourth choice. Postecoglou. So have we sort of fumbled another managerial sort of appointment? Who knows? But another thing I will say is the managers that I had high expectations from, going back to Ramos, who'd won it all with Sevilla, to Jose, to Conte, who I expected to win, have failed. And the managers that I didn't expect much from, Martignol, Pochettino, they were a great success at Spurs. So I'm going to give him a chance. I think it's ridiculous that we have parts of social media no to Postecoglou to stop. That is utterly ridiculous. We have to give this man a chance. We need to back him. We need to give him time. And I think that he needs patience if we do employ him. It can't just be he's got to work his magic in a season. There has to be a plan. There has to be a pathway. And I think that that's where the club has been lost over the last several years. It's all been short-termism. It's all been win now. We've lost our identity. The football has been far from enjoyable. Even in the best of times, at the end of last season, it was still sort of soak it up, counter-attacking football. So I'm willing to give him a go, Rick. And I understand that I've had a bit of criticism in the group and from others, because I'm trying to maybe convince myself, but convince others that this could be a good appointment. But I'm going to give him a go. I'm going to try and be positive about this situation. And as someone said in the comments, Ange will make us proud.
Interesting. I mean, it's I think what that appointment does do, it does provide a wide range of diverse opinions. We've got over 1,000 of you watching us here live, and I know many Celtic fans are interacting with us here during this show and telling us that, you know, to be excited. We've got an interesting man in charge that's going to make us proud again. Skinny Fat Hughie says there, as a Scottish Spurs fan, I'm absolutely buzzing for Ange. Plays great football. And he's a lovable bastard. Hopefully he brings Kyojo with him. And I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I think, you know, in our conversations, I've expressed to you my concern that we're bringing in somebody, in my opinion, that ultimately has got a massive, massive job on his hands, not only in terms of just trying to bring the players together, but ultimately the whole football club. And my biggest concern is, as I've said to you personally and to the boys, is that I'm just really concerned that if he doesn't hit the ground running, he's under massive, massive pressure to begin with. But I think ultimately, maybe bar Maurizio, who I know Maurizio wasn't for everyone, maybe anybody that was going to come in was going to be under immediate pressure from day one. But I mean, it's a name that really wasn't on the radar. Let's be honest about it. 6 weeks ago, I think it's one that ultimately.
I blame Macca.
Oh, I mean, Lee, of course, has mentioned him. We'll come on to Lee just in a second. Definitely on obviously how he.
Tier one. Do not even worry about that. You lot keep quoting all these journalists that know everything. Tier one, mate. You follow me at Lee McQueen for
when he tweeted that, I went, "Are you having a laugh, Lee?" Like,
7th of April, bookmark it.
I know. I've seen it. I followed it tonight. I saw it. I was like, "He's having a laugh."
Do you know what? I don't. Just quickly to interject there. What I don't like, Nick, is this Rick. Is I don't like this narrative that he has to hit the ground running, because we are undergoing a rebuild. And I understand if the results are like 4 losses from 5, but Ricky mentioned Ricky was advocating Ten Hag for Man U last summer, and he had a torrid start, but he had time, and they let him sort of fix things, and he also had a big budget to buy his players with. But he got rid of Ronaldo. He made some big decisions, and they ended up having a decent season.
Yeah. Okay. So, but this. Okay. Right. So, coming to what Frank was saying, is he going to get a chance of a rebuild? What is it? Is it going to be a rebuild, or is it Angelos, can you get us to top 4 with this squad this season? If you can, great. And we can maybe look at rebuilding next season because we need Champions League football. Or is it suffer this season, but play good football and try and win a domestic if we can? But he needs a rebuild. He needs to get rid of the players that aren't good enough. Is he going to have time to do that? This is the point.
We have to give him it. Someone just mentioned Klopp's first season at Liverpool. He finished 8th.
Frank, I know, mate, but what I'm trying to say is if that's the vision and the rebuild is the top of the list, I'm willing to go, okay, fine, let's see what you've got to offer. But if it's, you've got to try and get, if his press conference and he signs, I want to get this team back in the Champions League, I'm going to be like, mate, please, no. Because then we'll scrape in it and then we're just like a swan, like swimming, but really going like that under the water and trying to scrape top 4 all the time. I want to rebuild, mate. I want a complete clear out if we can in the next 2 or 3 windows. And if that's the case, then okay. Then I'll put my hands up and go, right, let's see what you got, Angelos.
You know what's interesting, Jace, if I can come over to you. You know, comment on the screen is from Richie says, all the praise is great to hear, but will he actually be given the time to manage the same way with the restrictions and obstacles that the previous managers have had? Now, I think it's been fairly clear that ultimately Conte and Mourinho hadn't got their number 1 targets. And as Lee has mentioned at the time, he brought in the link to Scott Munn, which I'm going to come to Lee in a second for. But Jason, I'll be honest about it. I think, in the group, on WhatsApp, when I've shared messages with you, I know you've been fairly underwhelmed so far by this recruitment process. Now it's becoming more real, and it appears the man is going to get the job. What's your feelings now? Have they changed at all? Share with the viewers and listeners how you feel, because generally you've been on this show for the last 6-7 years. You made your feelings clear over, of course, going back to Maurizio's appointment, and then obviously Mourinho's and Conte's. And I know many Spurs fans hold your opinion in high regard. So where do you stand on Ange Postecoglou looking like he's going to be the new Spurs manager?
Well, I think you're right. I think he was nowhere near he's nowhere near the list of candidates that the fans would have picked. I don't know how far up the list he was for Tottenham Hotspur. I certainly don't know how far he was up the list for Scott Munn. Maybe he was Scott Munn's number 1 target. I don't know. But, from a list of Nagelsmann's, what have you, I could have thought of there's about 20 managers that I'd have probably sooner seen pitch up than Ange. But and that's part of the frustration that's 70 days on, we don't appear for a fan that we're getting the man that we think or anywhere near the top of our list. We're settling for what we think is 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th best or whatever. That's the problem. I think you're right. The problems all come for him. I mean, he's, the Scottish League, forget the quality of the Scottish League. Celtic dominate. I know they had the year with Rangers, but it's not unusual for Scotland for Celtic to win doubles and things. So, on Ange's bad days at the start, when you're trying to rebuild, you might beat Falkirk 2-1. But on an Ange bad day in the Premier League, you'll go to Aston Villa and get beat 3-0. And that's a massive, massive difference. And so when you're you're right. You're talking about him having to hit the ground running. If in our first 10 games we've got 2 wins, 2 draws, and 6 defeats, then he is under massive pressure, because that's a worse record than Nuno, and Nuno was sacked. So you've got to be really, really careful that hopefully the fixture list is kind, and we get an Arsenal type fixture list at the start of the season where the big games are at home and we have some chances to settle into the season. But I think it's, and the other thing is how he wants to play. And you're right. Has he got players that will adapt to his methods? Has he got players that can do what he wants them to do? And if they can't, can he adapt his ways to get results, even though he's not got the players he wants? So there's massive doubts about the job. But in fairness, that could apply to Brendan Rodgers. It could apply to Ancelotti, as Frank talks about at Everton. It could apply to Jurgen Klopp coming and walking through the door. There are difficulties for any new manager at Tottenham. We have to see what the ball do for him. There are so many bits and pieces of that squad that's broken. You can sit here and say we need a new goalkeeper, we need a new centre half. We've got 3 left backs, we've got 3 right backs, we've got our best midfield player not playing until Christmas. You've got the conundrum with Kane. Is Sonny going to be Sonny of previous years? Is he back to the Sonny of last year? Is Kulusevski even going to sign a contract, or are we even going to get a deal for Kulusevski done? So there's a lot of things that he's got to get right, which in fairness to him, he can't he's not going to come in and just flick a switch and solve all of those problems, is he? But nobody would. But I think it's going to be, I think when you come in, if it was Nagelsmann, for instance, and I wouldn't necessarily have gone for Nagelsmann, but there seemed to be about 75% of the fan base would have been happy with Nagelsmann. So, like I'm saying, if Nagelsmann wins 2, draws 2, loses 6, there's still a bit more patience. But when you're down at number 10, 11, 12 on the list and you win 2, draw 2, lose 6, particularly if 1 or 2 of those defeats are big, heavy ones, that the pressure comes on him immediately. And I'm not so sure a lot of supporters have then got the patience to think this is a massive rebuild, because the rebuild's like an 18-month job. It's not an 18-game job, and the second half of the season we're flying. It's not.
And this is what we always talk about, and we spoke about off air. The issue that we now have is if we're going to fish in certain ponds and we're going to be whatever club we're going to be, the ticket prices are so out of you know, we're not competing in the transfer market, and we haven't been. Let's not kid ourselves with Chelsea, with Manchester City, with Manchester United. Now, the stadium was supposed to be this big game changer that would enable us to close that gap and to compete. So we've been fed a false narrative. And the problem is, throughout this 18-month period, if we do see green shoots and we start to see this style of play, are we patient? Are we thinking about the fact that we pay the highest ticket prices in Europe? I think the club have become so detached from reality with the way that they've priced the tickets in this new stadium that they think because we sit in better seats and we have a nicer surroundings, we have beer that comes out at the bottom of the bar and on taps, and we have Tim Winston, for instance, one of our own, great at what he does, but singing in the gangways, singing his music. The match day experience away from the football, is better. It's far greater than White Hart Lane. But the main objective and the main reason we go to watch or go to the stadium is to watch football. And the standard of football, the style of play has been awful since we've moved into that stadium. We've just finished 8th. So are fans willing to be patient to allow this rebuild to happen, and for 18 months pay top dollar to not quite see a winning team? I mean, what's your thoughts? This is an open question to everyone. Are you willing to give it time? If you start to see a better style of football, but we're not quite there, what are you willing to do, Jace? Are you willing to give it time?
Well, just on him, I think the one thing he's got in his benefit without Europe, and take away the checker trade, my feelings on that, but it does give him time on the training pitch where you're not, on a normal week, we played Sunday, Monday's a recovery day, Tuesday we're flying out to Europe, Wednesday's a Champions League game or a Europa League game, Thursday we're coming home, it's a recovery day, Friday we're preparing for Saturday's Premier League game. There's no actual time for him to work on the training pitch usually, whereas at least this way, finish Sunday, recovery Monday, and then we've got all week to try and to go along his route. So, and again, that would apply to any manager. So I think it's definitely an advantage to him to not have Europe. But you're, I mean, I'm seeing the right type of football to me is massive. But my one worry is that people saying, well, Ange plays the right style of football. There's 1,000 managers out there that play attacking football. Just to pick a manager because he plays the right football, that's not on its own enough quality to justify being a Tottenham Hotspur manager for me. But you're right. If I see football the right way, I think the big game will be Chelsea at home, and I bet that fixture list gives us Chelsea at home in the first 3 or 4 games.
It's in August, 100%.
The random fixture.
The random fixture list
always comes out random. Yeah,
of course.
We've had Chelsea really early the last couple of years, haven't we?
Yeah,
so you watch. We'll have Chelsea just before the international break. Poch is coming back, and then lots of people wanted Poch. Chelsea come and roll us over, then he's under pressure there, and then like that.
I will come out. I'm going to go.
Sorry, seemingly they come to us, we absolutely batter them, and Mauricio gets a matey fella, and we win, and we smash them 4-0. All of a sudden, you're on a different.
Even if it's 1-0, Lee. Even if it's 1-0, we've played decent football, and we've got a result against them. That'll be a massive lift for him.
Yeah. And if we do start slowly, what would exacerbate the problem is if Pochettino starts well.
And I think that
Yeah.
you could see the tide turn with the crowd. Obviously, if we lose 4 out of our first 8 and Pochettino flies with Chelsea, then there's going to be fan unrest, unfortunately. And that's
the key. That's the key. If Poch starts well for Chelsea and we're falling behind, just argument's sake, he's going to be proper under pressure. Big time.
And I feel sorry for him, because that anger will actually be the anger yet again at the board, but it will get taken out to a degree on Ange, and that's not his fault. It's not his fault he's down the list. It's not his fault Pochettino's gone to Chelsea. It's not his fault that we pay the dearest ticket prices. It's not his fault that we're a fractured club with so many anti-Levy. He can't help any of that, and he's never going to be able to fix all that in one go. But it will be hard for him, for sure.
Yep. I'm going to go to Lee, then I'm going to come to Ricks on this before we dive into more detail on him. Lee, I think you were one of the first we saw, obviously, online to link Scott Munn to the job. Scott Munn, or of course, obviously, Ange Postecoglou.
I was the first. Come on, boss, get it right, sir.
I'll let you take that crown. I mean, Lee, give me your thoughts. He's on the verge of being appointed now. He's got 2 league championships, 2 league cups, 1 Scottish Cup, 2 manager of the season, 7 manager of the months, 119 games, 85 wins to his name. Look, he's had a difficult... Lee, honestly, thoughts on his overall appointment?
Look, well, firstly, my namesake, we're not related, by the way, but Mark McQueen, he's putting a lot of comments in on the live today, because he's a Celtic fan. He knows Ange quite a lot. So, good to have you on board, Mark. Great name, by the way. Okay, so look, you must be living in a cave if you don't know that I wanted Poch back. So that's why I'm not massively happy about Ange being appointed, right? Because I wanted Pochettino to come back to his football club and be our saviour. However, a lot has to happen for any manager to walk into his football club today and be successful. The board needs to change their ways. They either need to step up or ship out, which a lot of people have been talking about, and they need to change their philosophy on the footballing side. Everything else about the club, and I've said it again and I say it again and again, is phenomenal. Stadium, the training ground, the facilities. I don't care about NFL and Beyonce's and all that going there. I think it's fantastic. I think it's great if it brings money into the football club, and they've done amazing. If we had 10, 20% of that detail that went into that stadium build on the pitch, on the footballing side, would be conquering Europe. That's how much of the disparity is between the footballing side or not. You have to give credit where credit's due, regardless if you knew anything about Scott Munn or not. The fact of the matter is the club have got in a chief footballing officer. Doesn't start his job yet. It doesn't start until July the 1st, as we know, but he's there. And his job title in itself suggests that he is going to run the footballing side. And the reason why I put that tweet out on the 7th of April, the day that Scott Munn got appointed, is because of the Australian connection. Now, anybody knows when you're building a team, whether it's in business or whether it's in sport or whatever it is, you need to have good people around you, better people around you, people that you know, people that you can trust. So it was really obvious to me that if Scott Munn trusts Ange, right, and he's adding in, it's quite obvious to me that there's going to be a link. I was absolutely baffled that no one else linked him that early on, to be fair. The second thing on that as well is that forget looking at credentials. This is not about credentials today. This is about, what does Tottenham Hotspur Football Club need? Now, this is about competence. This is about behaviour. This is about culture. This is about value. Yeah. And this isn't about a CV. This isn't about, I've won this and I've won that. It's not about that. It's about, can you get under the skin of these players? Can you get these players to play for you? Can you get the club, the values of the football club back to where we were before and beyond where we were? That's what Mauricio Pochettino did. And no one was calling for him. I remember going on Talk Sport, actually, and talking about he's going to be a puppet for Daniel Levy. He's a yes man. I wanted Rafael Benitez. How wrong was I? And I'm happy to be wrong all the time. I'm the one. Unfortunately for Daniel Levy, he's not the one that comes up and says, oh, actually, I've made a mistake. I'm happy to admit my mistakes. There's been plenty of them. But the point I'm making is that I'm not saying, look, for the staunch Levy out people, they will never give Daniel Levy credit for anything, let alone on the footballing side. But we've been craving for the footballing side to change, and the club have put in Scott Munn to start to change the footballing side. Now, Scott Munn, as we understand it, has got really good, strong ties and worked with Ange, I can't say his surname, I'm so sorry, I'm going to batter it, Postecoglou, and therefore,
Postecoglou.
thank you, my man, thank you.
Anytime.
And the reality is, if they work together and they know that the value of this football, the values of this football club, and we want to bring that back together, front foot, attacking football where we are, that's going to have a better chance of surviving than if Daniel Levy went above Scott Munn's head before we've even started and went and signed Nagelsmann, which by all accounts is what happened with the Nuno scenario. Nuno, after 10 games, gets fired and Daniel Levy goes for Conte, which Paratici, by all accounts, didn't think was in the right place to take the job at that period of time. And again, this is the point. I'm not articulating this very well. There's a lot of people that won't even listen to what I'm saying because it's deeper than what is written on somebody's CV. It doesn't matter. What matters today is, can this guy take us forward where we are today? Can he? Can he do that? And I'm backing him 100%. If the Tottenham Hotspur Football Club have appointed him, I'm getting behind the bloke. Simple as that. You have to get behind the manager. Was he my first choice? No. But could he work? And am I going to give him the benefit? Yeah, of course I am. I'm going to do that as a football fan because, quite frankly, I am sick to death of this season being sick to death. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of moaning. I'm sick of the constant negativity that the board and the Conte era and the Mourinho era before that, the rubbish football. I'm sick and tired of coming on here and moaning. Like, honestly, I'm a really happy guy. Like, I'm a really positive bloke normally. And like most people this season, if you're tuning in this season, you think, God, that Lee McQueen moans a lot. I don't normally, but this is what the club has done. I just want to get back to playing football in a really good way, in a way that is the Tottenham way, and then we can start to build from there. But I do agree with a lot of the points that everyone's made, is that it is going to be tough for him because the fans don't get behind him. But as you can see on screen from my namesake again, Mark McQueen, and you can see from all the other Celtic fans that are in here right now, he will get us on side. And will get us on side because he will do the bits. And I will say, you talk about, Mark says there about the J League in Yokohama. There was a certain guy back in 1996 that looked like something out of Bagpuss. He looked like the professor. He come with some glasses on. He looked like the little bird thing out of Bagpuss, right? He rocks up and people thinking, who's this geezer? And he become one of the most successful, even to this day, Premier League managers in Arsene Wenger. And he won the lot. So just because you've managed in the J League or just because you haven't managed in the Premier, doesn't necessarily mean to say that you're not going to do the business. So I think it's bigger than where you've managed. I generally do. And so for some people, they won't agree with that. That's fine. I think it is about, can we get everyone on what I call the crazy train, as you know, pulling in the right direction? That is a bigger piece of work than just looking at somebody's CV and going, yeah, okay, I'm going to hire him. We've had Mourinho, who's won more trophies than anyone else. What happened? We've had Conte, who's won 9 major trophies. What happened? CVs, yeah, it looks great. Doesn't fit. Maybe Ange is the fit right now for Tottenham Hotspur.
Rick, I have to apologise, mate. You've had to wait your turn on this. It's a subject that is massively, of course, sparking lots of interest across this show and across many others out there. Unbelievable. There's nearly over 1,400 of you watching us right now. Again, it's unbelievable. We're not even doing games now, and there's so much interest. So, again, thank you so much for all your incredible support. Even the Celtic fans that are trying to make us be optimistic on Ange Postecoglou's appointment. Rick, I just want to get your thoughts on it. And one question I want to ask you is one that I'm trying to still rank with myself, is that for the players like Sonny, Kane, Bentancur, Porro, Udogie, how excited do you think they would be at the prospect of being trained, coached by Ange Postecoglou? And I say that in the most gracious of respects, just to kind of pick your brains about what you think those players are thinking by this appointment.
Honestly, I don't know. We knew that we saw that there was a bit of disappointment in the players when Nuno arrived. You saw, even though some of the first 3 performances, they were all right. You know, we was winning, but you could see the massive drop off. And I think it's that the players are really intelligent in the sense of, if they know that you don't know your stuff, or they don't believe in what you're saying, and they don't believe in what you're trying to go forward with, then, you know, they don't back the manager, and that's what we need most of all. We need those players behind Ange if he's going to be the man. Like what everybody's been saying there, it's going to be tough either which way. We've got so many holes to fill. We've got so many cracks to fix, and hopefully someone like Ange can do that. Now, the good thing about him is that I saw one interview where he spoke about turning up at Celtic, and he was like, "Let's be fair, I was a joke." Do you know what I mean? I was considered a joke. And, you know, it was the Celtic fans that kind of stuck with him, stayed with him, and together they rose. And, you know, as we've seen in the comments today, they love him. And I think with him, like what Lee was saying there, it's all about the fit, right? You know, some managers and some players don't fit the shirt. You know, they're great at one club and they're terrible at the next. So hopefully this guy can come in, and with his humility, with his humbleness, with his, you know, he knows he's going to get it. He knows he's going to get it from a section of the fans. He knows he's going to get it from a section of the media. He knows that every result's going to be scrutinized because he's just gone through all of that in Scotland, do you know, and proved his worth. And from everything that I've seen, everywhere that he's gone, he's done that. Whereas people doubted him, people didn't really believe in him. And he's not only turned the squad around and had the squad, the players believe in what he's saying, but then gets the fans to turn around and start to back and starts to see. And that's what's going to be important for me. I need to see us compete again. I need to see us, you know, play not only on the front foot, but I've said it many a time, like, stop worrying about the opposition, let the opposition worry about us. And that's one of his philosophies. And when I read that, I was actually kind of like, oh, maybe we've got something here. With his humility and with the journey that he's had, he's only going to work super duper hard. He's only going to try and do everything that he can possibly do. And we know the problems, as we've alighted in this pod and every other pod during this season. We know the problems, and we know the problems are massive. But if he can start to give us some of the Tottenham way back, if he can start to bring some joy to those boys, if he can start to bring some joy to the fans, if we can see progression, I think the fans will back him, and I think the fans will be with him. You know, there is a lot to do. Ant spoke about a total rebuild. I'm totally with him, right? I'm totally with him. But my worry is every time that we've sold somebody, the replacement that has come in next has not been the one. Do you know what I mean? We haven't replaced our best. So if Hugo's going, you know, and there's reports of many a different keeper, but are we going to replace him with the one? Like, I don't know how much this new structure that we've got, that Parachi put into place there while he was there, of all the coaching and all of the scouts around the way, and them leveling us up to compete with the same kind of stature of teams around Europe in those departments. Are those going to step up and replace the players that need replacing with the quality that somebody like Ange wants? Because for both transfer windows that we've had, they've been club signings. And this is what I've realised as well. All of them are club signings. I mean, apart from Perisic last year, I think all of them were club signings. You know, we looked at January. You know, we ended up getting Porro in, which was, I suppose, was one for a wing-back system for Conte. But from what I was hearing, Conte wanted Denzel Dumfries. You know, somebody who was big, stronger, physically able to not only get up and down, but to be able to actually kind of have that strength on the ball and get into the tackles and all of that jazz. So are we going to replace the players that we're going to sell with the quality and the standard, and that have the heart and the head to go forth and play the way that Ange or our next manager wants to play? That's what's worrying right now. But I think with everything that I've read so far, that it could, like exactly what Lee was saying, I totally kind of give him big claps and a salute, because, you know, we're in a state and we need somebody to fix at least the footballing problems. And hopefully Ange can be the man that can do that.
Ricks, love it. I mean, coming over to you, Ant, you know, he's walking into a club where there's a number of, as you mentioned, situations to try and resolve. One of them being the fact that Hugo Lloris has publicly come out and declared that he would like to leave the football club. And as we record this show on this day, Harry Kane, a lot of momentum gaining that, of course, with Real Madrid allowing Karim Benzema to leave the club, that he is going to be their number one target this summer.
Yeah.
Do you think for any man coming in, they couldn't have walked into what is, again, a very difficult situation they face? I mean, arguably, you thought Nuno's situation was quite difficult when obviously he came in the door and Harry was being linked to Manchester City. If you were to make him a to-do list, and how long would that list go?
In terms of what, Rick? What him coming in? What Kane coming at lead? Like wanting to leave?
What needs to be resolved? I mean, there's so many issues that the boys have touched upon in terms of recruitment, in terms of what needs to happen within the club, and you've mentioned that word rebuild.
Needs a total rebuild. I think if Kane does go, obviously we don't want him to go. Absolutely not. But you know, if he's come to a point in his career where it's like, look, I'm 30 next month, I want to go somewhere else and challenge, then good luck to you, mate, and wish you all the best. But unfortunately, for Ange, he's got to come in now and put a stamp on things and get the players that he wants. And if it is the manager decision to maybe do, if he does let Kane go, we've got to back him. We can't. No, but do you know what I mean, Lee? Do you know what I mean? What can we do if in 3-4 years' time, Kane retires and then we haven't got no one else to come in? What's going to happen then? We're going back and sort of like, you look at Liverpool, they've got 4 centre forwards. Chelsea got 3 centre forwards. Man City got 2. Do you know what I mean? They've always got someone else there. We haven't. All right, Richarlison, you can say, but he hasn't had the best of seasons. So maybe we do need someone else to come in, someone that Ange wants or recommends, comes in and challenges Kane. So if and when he does ever leave, then we've got someone to slot back in. He's coming at a really weird time, but you know, what can you do?
Just how concerning, Frank, is it with relation to Harry Kane's situation now? The fact that this momentum is gaining towards Real Madrid, and it's not just him, of course, the club captain now, Hugo Lloris, declaring that he would like to leave the football club. Is it
end of an era
already,
isn't it?
It's an end of an era, but for a manager coming in, how much of a concern is that they're walking into, even before they touch the actual squad to manage from day one, in terms of those issues that are surrounding that piece?
Well, you're losing your captain and probably the greatest ever player to play for the club in one foul swoop. Now, I don't know personally how much influence Hugo has over that squad. We obviously saw bits from All or Nothing, but you know, he is a big character in the dressing room. That's for sure. I think his time is up. So obviously it will be interesting to see who he's replaced with. But I think that dressing room needs characters and leaders, and to lose your talisman would be devastating. Now, from Kane's perspective, is he 47 goals behind Shearer's record? Is that right? 213 Premier League goals. Yep. So it's a conundrum, but you just do not say no to Real Madrid. Now, whether that Daniel Levy and ENIC and whoever makes these decisions with Levy can negotiate a deal with Real Madrid, they've always said that if they were to sell Kane, they'd prefer to sell him abroad, which I understand. I totally get that, but I think he can't say no to Real Madrid. If he is their number one target as a centre forward, he has to go. Simply, the record 47 goals. I don't buy into this. You know that outweighs any other achievements, because if he goes to Real Madrid, they always win the Champions League, or you know, every 1 to 2 to 3 years, they're always competing. They're always there. He can go live in Madrid, experience something new, play for the biggest and greatest football club in the world. And win everything. You know, he can go there and compete for the Champions League every season, playing with some unbelievable players. They're going to sign Jude Bellingham. They'll go again. You know, they've been heavily outclassed by Barcelona this season in the Liga. They're absolutely miles off it. They just scraped in to finish in second. I think Atletico at one point were second during the game because they were winning at Villarreal. But they're going for a rebuild. They're going to spend lots of money. And I wouldn't blame him. For me, even if he handed in a transfer request and he sort of forced his way out, for me, it would not tarnish his legacy because he's been a great servant for this club. And moving to this game-changing stadium where we could compete with the big clubs, and we had that sort of era of Pochettino where we did compete, to not build a team around him capable of challenging. I mean, in a team that's finished 8th, he scored 30 Premier League goals this season. Scored in, is it 24 different games, Lee, or 26? 26 different games, which is a record. 26. Broken a Premier League away goals record. another season of 30. It's insane the numbers this guy puts up, and everything runs through him in the team. It's the way he drops in, he starts the attacks. He's so integral to this side. So if we are going to lose him, we rip it up and start again. I totally get that. We're just going to have to suffer it and stomach it. It's going to be a hard one to take, but you cannot blame him, Rick. You can't. No. And it would be, for me, it'd be more of a bitter pill to swallow if he went to another Premier League club and we had to watch him week in, week out, scoring against us and that sort of stuff. That would be hard to take, but good luck to him if he decides to go to Real Madrid. It's the biggest club in the world. He's earned that move. He's a special player, special talent, but Postecoglou to come in, he'd be left with Richarlison as his sole number 9, so we'd have to get another one in. And I don't know. I mean, he'd obviously prefer to keep him. I understand that there's been issues with Kane in the sense that he doesn't press anymore. I get that. One thing I did notice what Mason was trying to do for the last couple of games, which goes back to Rick's point, which maybe I was a little bit harsh on, is he was, of the 4 that would press, or the 3 that would press, he was the one that was withdrawn. So he'd sort of drop off and allow others to press. There'd be sort of a third man runner from midfield who would go and make the press on his behalf almost, and he'd stay a bit deeper. So you can negotiate that with a player of that quality and class. But yeah, it's a nightmare. I mean, to have a new manager with no director of football at the moment, no manager as of now, Real Madrid circling your best player, your captain's leaving, publicly stated he wants to leave. Endon Bele's won Serie A this season. Toby Alderweireld just won the Belgian league this season. And who else is Eric Lamela and Brian Hill have won the Europa League.
Carter Vickers, Joe Hart, triple winners.
Carter Vickers, yeah, the treble winners at Celtic. It's been such a tough season, Rick, with all that's gone on. So to lose Kane for any new manager, that's a nightmare start. You're starting up, it's an uphill start, isn't it?
I just think for anybody coming in, it almost feels like the impossible job. I mean, JC's referred to the fact that he's been used to dealing with a lot of difficult situations in terms of management so far. I mean, look, he's at an age where you think he's seen a lot. I mean, I think the one thing obviously he doesn't have is European experience, but I think Lee is making the point that forget maybe about the CV and what he's achieved and what he's done. Actually look at the situation he's coming into. And I just wonder, apparently he's, from what we read, he's already given Spurs his word that he's going to agree to come. I just wonder, with that in mind, whether he's already of the knowledge that he could potentially lose Harry Kane.
He'll know that, Rick. He'll be aware of everything that's going on. He'll be in close contact with Munn. And I think that now, sorry, Jason, I'll just quickly say one thing. Whoever comes in now, for the next 2 to 3 seasons, the most important thing for this football club is recruitment. We have to get it right. It's been so wrong for so long. We have to get the recruitment right.
What do you think on that, Jace, that situation that he comes in to maybe find himself in? Club captain looking to go, striker being circled by Real Madrid?
Overall, I don't think it's such a negative for him as perhaps we all say it needs a total rebuild. It needs a change in mentality. Kane, Hugo and that have been there for so long, have had so many near misses. And I think Harry's presence is so large over the club that if we go into next season and Harry's there, it's still going to be every interview, isn't it? Is he staying? Is he staying? Or do you think you can convince him? And sometimes you think, do you know what? If I need a clean slate, and I need a really clean slate, so the players' committee that we condemned, the players' committee met about Conte and things, and Kane and Hugo and that are on that committee. Maybe it would be easier for Ange to impart his ways on a fresh group, if you like, without that presence of Kane and such, and without thinking, well, it's the poster boy of the club. I'd like to do this, but I can't upset him, and I can't. If we're trying to get him to sign an extension, I can't leave him out to try and do. You know what I mean? So it actually might work in his favour. The lack of quality or whatever will obviously be a loss. But I think overall, he might actually find it a little bit easier to impart his way. We saw that, didn't we, with Poch when he tried to do it and he had to leave out the Capus, the Lennons, the Soldados, the Adebayors, that type of group. And I'm not saying Harry's a disruptive influence in that way, but he might find that if the captain and the vice captain's gone, and he can he can go and get who he wants and put them in as the number one without thinking, oh, that might upset H and things like that. It might actually work in his favour to get his ideas across much, much quicker.
Guys, let's try and close then on where we are with the situation, if we can. Lee, come around to you so I give you a chance on Harry Kane and, of course, Postecoglou maybe walking through the door to this situation. Do you share Jason's views there in relation to that situation? Lloris coming out and saying we've reached an important moment, whether it'll be the club or me, it's the end of an era. I have a desire for something else. I will carefully study what is possible. However, I haven't forgotten that I have a year left on my contract here, and in football, it's hard to predict what will happen. I think what you want when a new manager comes in is you just want a clear focus and a clear mind. And unfortunately for Ange Postecoglou, he might not have that. He's got his club captain saying he wants away. We've got the situation around Harry Kane yet again with a manager, which Nuno had to go with. And we can't forget how that did, let's be honest about it, over-impede press conferences from day one on Nuno's first day in the job.
Yeah.
So how does he navigate this, Lee, for a man that says he's got a lot of experience and ultimately he's always faced every challenge that he's had head on?
Well, I think this what comes back down to the very top of the club and who is running and pulling the strings. Because for me, if you employ me, say I'm Ange, and thank goodness for all of you Spurs fans out there that it's definitely not going to be managing football club, right? But if I come into a new team or if I'm the manager and I've got to have these conversations, I'm sitting down with every single player individually and I'm saying, do you want to be here? What do you want? Do you want to be here? Are you motivated and incentivized to be here? And if the answer is no, or if there is, yeah, but, like Hugo's coming out and saying, they're gone. I don't care who they are, or what they're on, or what their contracts are. They then get passed to the recruit, the people that would be the Scottmans, the director of football, say, right, you need to get this player out of the football club. Because this is why we're not together. This is why we're not pulling in the right direction. That might sound ridiculous. And again, a lot of people won't agree with me. But this is how you build elite teams. I'm telling you now, this is how it's happening. So this is what I would do. And I would sit down with Harry and I would say to him, I'd ask him, and if, you know what, I did really want to move to Man City, and do you know what, Real Madrid are in for me. Like Frankie said, if Real Madrid are in for you, you can't say no. If there's an element of doubt that you don't want to be here, you need to transfer him. You need to get him out of the football club, because there'll be people like Sonny that will come into that room and say to me as the manager, and I'll say to Sonny, do you want to be here? And they go, yeah, 100%. 1,000,000%. I'm giving everything for this club. I want to be here. Or it might be Porro. Somebody put on the comments earlier, Porro forced to move to come to Tottenham. Like, there will be players in that squad, in that team, that want to play for Tottenham Hotspur full on. I'm not having a go at Harry at all. I totally agree with what Frank said. It is about him being granted where he needs to be and whatever. But so many times we've chased the golden goose. So many times we've gone, yeah, but one more year, Gareth, please. Or, please, let's not sit. Carrick, please stay Carrick. Please stay Berbatov. Please don't go to Liverpool Keane. Don't go to Portsmouth Defoe. Where does it get you? It gets you nowhere, because Tottenham Hotspur Football Club are Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. And look, I think the best possible thing for me as a fan, not looking at it the way I would handle it, but as a fan, I think obviously the best possible thing for football club would be for Harry Kane to stay. But if he genuinely wants to go, I think the scenario should be that we sign a contract with Real Madrid, that we get the first refusal back on Harry Kane, or we get a buyback clause in there, and he cannot play for another Premier League club. We'll let him go, and we'll let him go for a decent fee for Real Madrid. This BS coming out that Daniel Levy wants 200 million for him. Are you having a laugh? Like John, one of our own, Lily White Rose, pointed out to me on WhatsApp earlier. He's only got a year left in his contract. He can talk to Real Madrid in 6 months. They're not going to pay 200 million for him. So instead of pricing it out the market, Mr. Levy, let's get something that is suitable for Kane. Grant him what he needs and what he wants. Get Real Madrid on side, but make sure that we've done the deal that we can have him back. So he comes back, and like Frank said earlier, he can then beat the record. The record is our record. It's not just Harry's. It's ours as fans. We own that record as well. Do you see what I think? I said this on the last show, and it's so weird. I don't want to see Harry Kane break that record in a Man United shirt, on a Man City shirt, on a Newcastle shirt. It's our record. He needs to break it in Tottenham shirt, and he's young enough. I don't bowl this rubbish. Oh, he's turning 30, he's getting on a bit. He's in prime of his years. This bloke will play football till he's 35, 36. Benzema's leaving Real Madrid after winning the Champions League last year. How old is he? He's 37. Like, you're deluded if you think Kane's just going to drop off like in a year. He's got bags of football left. And I put, he's injured all the time. Yeah, is that what you're saying in the comments? He hasn't missed 3 Premier League games on the trot since 2018. It's a myth. He's completely changed his ankle injuries and his leg injuries and all that sort of stuff, hip injuries, whatever it was. So I think for me, that's how I would handle it if I was a manager. And I think seeing all the Celtic fans in here and commenting on Ange, I think Ange has got that job to come in and do. And you've got to trim the squad down. Like I think we said it, Rick, last time. It's 37 registered first team players in his squad, and people are banging on about transfers. Like, you are. Again, I'm sorry, I'm not sticking up for the club here. I'm not sticking up for Daniel Levy spending money or not spending money. You're deluded if you think that you can just buy more players in when you've got a squad of 37. Like, you have to cut your cloth around what you've currently got. £230 million worth of talent out on loan, and we're putting stories up about, let's go and sign 5 new players. We don't need 5 new players yet. We need to get them out the door, as Frankie said right at the beginning. Like, we need to sort out that regeneration of players. Do you see where I'm coming from? The last big name that left football club was 2017, and it's Carl Walker.
Yep.
So do you know what I mean? Like, we've gone from we always sell, we're a selling club, to we never sell anything, and now we can't even get rid of players. So that needs to change. And I think if that part of that is Kane. My only wish as a fan would be that if he does go, it's done quickly, so we don't have all of this malarkey like we had last time around, and it's overshadowing everything else. He doesn't go to another Premier League club, and he does go to Real Madrid. That's the best outcome for us fans, and that we get him back. And let's be honest about it, we did it eventually in the end. We did get Bale back as well, and he had a bit of a swan song with us as well. If we can get Harry Kane back for a couple of seasons after he's gone off and done his let's call it a sabbatical, shall we, from Spurs. I think the problem with all of that, of course, is what does that say to your teammates? Do you know what? I know I ain't going to win nothing here, so I'm going to bugger off to the best team in the world. I'm going to win a few bits and bobs with you, and then when I come back, I'll be just lauded and I'll come and break the record for my... It's not a great look, is it? So no. In an ideal world, nothing's an ideal world, is it, Rick?
No, we're not. When it comes to Ant, when it comes to the rest of the guys, when it comes to close off, and very quickly for you, how did his next couple of weeks look in terms of Kane's future? Postecoglou coming through the door. It's a big, big job to come.
It is a really big job. If Ange is in, then we have to get behind him. He's got to start putting his stamp down, who he wants, who he doesn't want, and we got to go from there. The transfer window opens in a couple of weeks or next week, so it's got to start. June the 14th has to start now, not transfer deadline day. And as Lee said, if Kane is to go to Real Madrid, get it done early so we can move on and wish him all the best. Absolutely. But I'm going to shoot off, lads, so I'll love you and leave you.
Pleasure. Let's come to Frank, then we'll go to Rick's, and we'll go to James to close it. Frank, let me ask you just finally on this subject to give you opportunity on it with regards to Ange and Kane and what's to come. You've obviously discussed already the situation we find ourselves in. How do you expect it to play out, Frank, in these next coming weeks?
If I was to make a prediction, I honestly think if Real Madrid make a concrete offer of around sort of 70, 80 million, I think Harry Kane will want to go. I truly believe that. Again, what player has turned down Real Madrid? All the big players, the Galactico era, you don't turn down Real Madrid. So I think Ange will be the manager. I think Kane possibly will go. And if that's the case, as Ant said, and it has to be, if we're going to do it and we're going to make these wholesale changes, do it early, get the players that don't want to be there out the door early, identify some of the targets. We're not going to sign 5 or 6 players, but the 2 or 3 that perhaps we sign, identify who they're going to be early. And I'd also like to see, just to add in there, whoever is the next manager, I'd like to go back to the days of having the academy players having a pathway to the first team, because we've come so far removed from that. And I think that is something that has to be addressed. If they're not good enough, then obviously, and there's issues in the academy. I don't think there is. For me, there's some good young players. That's another conversation for another day. But there are some good young players coming through. But I want the new manager to implement a pathway for the youth players, clear the deadwood early, echoing what Lee said, find out who wants to be there and who doesn't want to be there. And unfortunately, if Kane doesn't want to be there and he wants to go, Tottenham Hotspur Football Club move on.
Yeah. Frank, been a pleasure, mate. Thank you so much for your time. I know it's been difficult this season with work commitments, so we really appreciate you jumping back on. Been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. Rick, let's come to you.
Thanks.
It's going to be a busy last busy next few weeks for Spurs in store. Bless you, you've given so much of your time to Last Word on Spurs over these years. We're in for yet another crazy journey on this show with what's to come. Rick, what do you think is to come in these next couple of weeks for Tottenham, and of course, what the summer holds for us?
It's going to be a summer of change. It's going to be a summer of change. As Hugo said, it's going to be end of eras, and hopefully it's a summer of positive change. Hopefully we can go in the new direction. Hopefully we can shed the skin that we've had on our backs for the last 4 seasons under different styled managers. And hopefully we can actually come out of this and just look a better version of us. And we can see ourselves moving forward, not just win every game. Of course, we all want to win every game, but actually moving forward, competing, going for things, going for in the cup competitions, and with a clear week, hopefully we can start playing more of our first teamers. Where it's all in the country as well, where it's all in the UK, the domestic cups and the league. We don't have to travel nowhere, so hopefully the injuries are lower, and you can actually.
We might get Swansea away. That's overseas.
That's true. That's true. Sorry, Jace. Sorry, mate. But I think with Kane and Postecoglou, I think it's going to be important, and I don't want to upset Frankie, but I think it's going to be important that Mason sticks around. I know Mason's got a few offers on the table. I know it'd be great for him to go out there and cut his teeth at another side and kind of prove himself as a manager. But I think not only his friendship, but I think he does have respect amongst the squad, who is still there. And I think if Ange Adam is his number 2, I think that would help a lot. If Kane wanted to stay and he does end up staying, I think having Mason beside him will encourage him a little bit, because he knows if it all goes up in the air, then at least there's somebody there that the boys trust and he trusts. Do you know what I mean? So I think if Mason was to stick around and to kind of continue his development with Ange, then I think that maybe that could be positive for the ones that we want to keep.
Ricks, thank you so much, mate. We're in for yet another bumpy ride, and you've been a massive part of it in Last One on Spurs, mate. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure, mate, to have you on.
Always having me, man. Always an honour and a pleasure, my friend.
Always, and likewise, Rick's the same. Jace, let's come around to you to close this. I've been saying we're in for a busy next couple of weeks. The appointment, and then what happens, of course, in the opening of the window, and how we deal with that, both with the manager and whoever that director of football is. Do you have a prediction, Jason, how this is all going to work out and manifest itself ahead of the start of the season? Or is that looking too far ahead?
It's too far. It's too far. I mean, we don't know yet what job he's being brought in to do. As the boys have said, is he brought in to still get top 4? Is he brought in just to re-energise the squad and start a genuine transition? You have no idea. And we have no idea how other teams will play out. So I'm certainly not going to sit here and put targets and things like that for him, other than the fact we will definitely finish above Brighton next year. But we'll finish above Brighton and Villa next year, put it that way. And I think we'll finish above Newcastle next year. But
genuinely believe that, yeah? Is that with or without Harry Kane?
Yeah, but that may be because they fall backwards. None of those 3 teams have had any European football in midweeks or anything like that. And they haven't got squad. You've just seen at the end of the season where Brighton had Saturday, Wednesday, up, lose 5-1 at Everton, win the next game, lose by 4, up the next, and they will have to embrace Europe. They're not going into Europe to make the numbers up. Teams like Brighton and Villa will have to embrace Europe. They'll have to play their best side and things. You saw how that happened with West Ham, who in fairness had that real run to that Europa semi-final, didn't they, when they lost to Frankfurt? Look at their league form, totally collapsed. So, and Newcastle being in the Champions League. And I still don't think Newcastle will attract 8 or 9 top-class players to be able to compete on both fronts. So I see us finishing above those 3 next year, partly, as I say, because they won't have anywhere near as good a season. And we finished 2 points behind Brighton, and we were dog shit all season. So, let's be honest. And we doubled Brighton. So, we haven't finished 25 points behind Brighton. So we'll just have to see how the summer plays out, mate. It's England, Australia in the summer anyway. The cricket's on, the golf's on, the volleyball's on. I mean, why are you worried about Ange Postecoglou? Just let me enjoy the other sports. Let me enjoy the pre-season friendly in Bangkok. And then I'll start to worry about it. One of the best things about Europe is I can cancel the BT subscription. So there I am, £360 a year better off.
And we got Wimbledon, Jace.
Fletcher and Steve
And
McManaman
Wimbledon.
ever again.
We're going to
Perfect.
collar in you over there, don't worry. Honestly. Oh, Jason, what's to come? Guys, thank you ever so much. It's going to prove to be a busy summer in store. Frank, thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming back on.
My pleasure, Rick. Thank you. And I look forward to being back on next season, but hopefully with more positive things to talk about Spurs related.
Absolutely. And Rick, for your sins, bless you. I know you've been doing a lot of midweeks for us. It might just be the domestic cups, my friend, and unfortunately no European action for the season. How does that sound?
No worries, brother. No worries. Win, lose or draw, come on, you Spurs, and brighter days ahead, man. This is going to be the sea of change. Let's bloody well hope anyway. Come on.
Jason is going to have a good bit of time off. He has got the lots of other activity sports to get into, so we'll be having a little bit of a break. We might catch him when he's in Bangkok for his sins.
The golf's on all. The golf's on.
This guy multitasking.
I've just heard that Ange wants Adama Traore. I've just had that breaking news that Ange wants that Adama.
Get him out. Get him out. I want him sacked.
From day one. Lee, let's go to you, mate. It's going to be a busy summer in store. You can't make, I mean, you honestly can't make it up, Lee. You were one of the first, or you say the first out there to link us to the man. It looks like he's going to be the new manager. It's fair to say we've got a lot of Spurs content coming our way, haven't we, really?
Mate, can't wait to be with you on it, buddy, mate. It's going to be a mad summer. We're going to be linked with absolutely everything and everyone, and probably sign no one, which is normal in the Spurs transfer window. Let's be honest. I think there is, this is a changing time for sure. Many still want the board changed, and out. And that hasn't gone away. I think that, whilst we're working on making that happen, or they're working on making it happen, or if there's a bio, you mentioned at the beginning before that there was the Iranian guy that was muted, and then QSI that was muted as well, and all of them links have gone away. So I'm sure they'll be back as well. You've got Kane, you've got no women's manager, you've got no actual managers today, there's no director of football. It's a huge job. But all we can do is talk about where we are. If Ange comes into the building and he starts to put smiles on people's faces, this is so basic stuff. But if you start putting smiles on people's faces that work around you, if you start putting smiles on people's faces that work with you, above you, below you, you watch their performance levels change, productivity changes. It's so basic. And I think this guy has got them the basis of their credentials. Let's see what happens. You've got to get behind the guy. If it's not your choice, or if it is your choice, it doesn't matter. If he is the manager, we have to get behind him, and I'll be singing his name and getting behind him when we go back to the team. Hopefully it works.
Yeah, I agree. Well, listen, from Ant, from Frank, from Jace, from Rix, from Lee, we've been the last one on Spurs. We'll be back with you in due course of what is to come. But as always, thank you so much for all of your incredible support this evening and throughout the summer and before that. All you wonderful viewers, loyal listeners out there, thank you so much. We're back with you soon. From all of us here, please keep well, keep safe, and as always, come on, you Spurs.